There are a strand of conservatives who view the American founding with skepticism. And outsiders to being on the right, I think, would look at that and be like, what are you talking about? Like, I think someone who is on the left politically, or even like center left, they just sort of all think that we're like Tea Partyites. And they view people on picket lines in 2000, what was it, 12 or 2008 and 10, right?
10, yeah.
The Tea Party movement. They just like think that all people on the right are sort of rabid constitutionalists. That's not really the case. And I think one of the things that I noticed, particularly and have come to accept after Jan 6, not to like overblow what happened that day, but like there are a lot of people out there who don't just accept the state of the Democratic Republic of the United States that we have, the way that it is structured, and view it as working at all. There are a lot of conservatives who think that from the beginning there were mistakes made. What were the mistakes in your mind? Because I've heard you a couple of times mention that the founding missed something important in restraining maybe our impulses, right, to try to get things right as people and be virtuous.
Well, I'd say right off the bat, I don't reject the founding, but I think we need to understand it in its proper place. It's a particular historical event. The founding documents were written by mortal men, flawed men, in a particular place, in a particular time, in particular circumstances. And I think actually that they're fairly adequate insofar as they go, those documents, as, of course, a counterweight or a revolt against the usurpation of executive authority by the English Parliament following the Dutch invasion of 1688. But we're certainly dealing with the consequences of 1688 today and of 1776, but we are not living in 1688 or 1776 today.
And by the way, what Declan's saying is not a new conservative line on the founding, because, I mean, within the conservative intellectual sphere, yes, now you have a resurgent kind of Brent Bozellite, Catholic integralist right, which just, I think it's fair to say, rejects the founding outright. But there have always been different strains of camps within the conservative intellectual movement that A, have just disagreed about what the founding meant, right? We're not unified in our understanding of what the founding is. And B, have argued that there are aspects of the founding which caused defects in the American spirit that we have to constantly watch for. And I think this is the division between like the East Coast Straussians and the West Coast Straussians. The East Coast Straussians see the sort of Jeffersonian strain of American thought as leading to progressivism. And the West Coast Straussians see progressivism as a departure from the founding. So,
can you unpack that a little bit
Sure.
for me? So what is it about Thomas Jefferson's legacy that has led us down the road that you're talking about?
Well, it's not just Jefferson, but it's the sort of more radical strains of Enlightenment thought that, say, produced at their most extreme, the Jacobins in the French Revolution, right? An antipathy towards religion, towards tradition, a unnecessary or excessive attachment to politics as the pursuit of abstract principles, right? These things, there is disagreement amongst all conservatives, or most conservatives are skeptical to a certain extent of those things, but there's disagreement, and there always has been disagreement within conservatism about just how present those things are in the founding and how much the founders themselves were proponents of them.
Whether or not the government was supposed to actually do anything. Like, I think one of the things that comes up in this debate a lot is the issue of value neutrality. Whether or not government can be neutral in any sort of sense when it is, when it is like stepping out of a certain realm. Like, is government supposed to have an opinion on whether or not people should stay married or it should be harder to get divorced, right? Like, there's sort of the onset of no-fault divorce that happened in the 60s and 70s, completely reshaped society. And it was sort of done through the judiciary, through circuit courts. It's just like, well, it should be easier for people to absolve contracts. But your viewpoint has always been like, just because you liberate something doesn't mean that you don't then sort of enslave us to another thing, which I think, like in the case of no-fault divorce, we've become enslaved to other sorts of problems rather than just not being able to like get out of marriages as quick.
Right, yeah. I mean, so there's two things there. There's the general principle that neutrality is a myth. And this is obviously true. When you make law, when you conduct politics, you are making a statement on what kind of society you want to build, what kind of society you want to create and live in. That can never be a neutral statement. There's always a value claim inherent in it. You're always legislating morality. And the difference is between the two camps of the conservative movement right now is, do we legislate an absolute individualism where we place the individual conscience over any outside authority, or do we legislate a shared vision of substantive morality where we acknowledge ends and goods as things to be achieved through law rather than left to the chaos of 350 million individual actors?